Video games get accused of a lot of bad, and while criticism isn't a problem, sometimes it's pretty unjustifiable. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 7 ridiculous things that video games get blamed for. Starting with number 7, over in the UK, the Association of Teachers and Lecturers has said that video games are making children violent. A representative from the association said that horrific games are causing children to act out quite graphic scenes, which is causing a rise in hitting, hurting, and thumping. Now, here's this thing that I just want to mention that I think a lot of adults who don't remember being kids, don't remember. Kids do that stuff. It's incumbent on them to break that stuff up, at least while the kids are at school. Like, that's the teacher's job. What I'm saying here isn't a definite reason for why teachers are doing this, just a theory. But what I'd say is it seems like they're trying to find a reason not to do a thing that's a part of their job. This could be for a rational reason. Parents have definitely shifted into a my child can do no wrong mode, and they will actively go after people who are saying anything negative about their kids, including rational things that are simply designed to stop them from hitting another child, for instance. I would say not every parent out there, but I also would say that most people know at least one, and I could understand teachers not wanting to deal with that kind of parent as they say this is unacceptable behavior and your child will not be allowed to do that, but at the same time, it's definitely not just video games that cause that. If some family lived in a house on a hill with no electricity, I promise you that those kids would be hitting, hurting, and thumping each other. Maybe even more than they do with the video games in their lives, because they'd have more time. That's right, I think they'd still be wailing on each other even if there were no thwomps in their life. Now, I'm not saying it can't influence their little minds, and I wouldn't do that, but to attribute something that kids just do anyway to video games is kind of weird, honestly. Moving on to number 6, an 18-year-old man sold his kidney in China because he had racked up a debt of about $3,200, which were nebulously labeled as related to video games by the Chinese media. This young man sold his kidney for $6,500, which the going price of a kidney is a large amount more than that, $47,000. And while I'm not saying that if you approach the black market naively, they won't rip you off, even getting ripped off, he brought in about twice what he needed with the kidney, implying this was not an insurmountable debt. The Chinese media tried to pin it on video games. But this sounds like a situation where a lot of things went wrong. Let's say that video games actually were the cause of the reason he had that money. Why was there no one in his life that could help him? Why did he immediately jump to kidneys? And why is it so easy to sell a kidney in China, but so hard to know what a kidney is worth? I would suggest that if he understood that a kidney was worth nearly $50,000, he wouldn't have sold it for $6,500. So even making the assumption that it was video games that fully put him into debt, there are a number of places in his life where selling a kidney could have been avoided. Also, what if this guy has a gambling addiction? Then the real problem isn't really video games, but the fact that gambling mechanics in video games. And more than a few people who love video games are really critical of that. Show me the person who's like, yeah, loot boxes, baby. I'm sure they exist, but they're fools. And most people think they're fools. Now, this stuff is actually a problem, and if taken on, would be a drastic improvement for the industry as a whole, as getting loot box mechanics and crap like that out of video games would overall improve video games. But you'd have to say the problem is loot boxes or whatever gambling mechanic, and not the problem is video games, and to spend any time actually learning about the conditions present in this person's life would be to search for the actual cause of him going into debt. And I promise you, the nebulous, generalized video games aren't the reason. What this sounds like to me is a combination of various social failures. Failures to set up systems that prevent people from being exploited. Because let's say the video games did exploit him. Not only is that exploitation not inherent in the art form, but more importantly, why were they allowed to do that? We know for certain the black market exploited him with his kidney. Why were they allowed to do that? Just the nebulous video games were the problem doesn't work when you actually consider things from the perspective of what specifically went wrong here. And at number 5, some news outlets have used some research to attribute a rise in rickets, a disease that is caused by, among other things, a vitamin D deficiency, on video games. Professors Pierce and Cheetham wrote in the British Medical Journal that there are 20 new cases of rickets each year in Newcastle alone. Apparently, England has about 100 cases of this a year. The researchers say vitamin D deficiency has become more common. And wouldn't you know it? Because people know that you get vitamin D from the sun, they decide that that's the only place you can get vitamin D from, and because people are spending more time indoors, they're getting vitamin D deficiencies more often. The problem is that you can get it from a large amount of problems. You can get it by not eating a diet with enough vitamin D in it, for instance. Or let's say you're a kid and you're breastfed and don't get vitamin D supplements, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're even having a vitamin D deficiency in the first place. You may have a calcium problem or a phosphorus problem. But hey, no, video games. It's video games. Never mind that there are a ton of reasons someone might get rickets, a lot of them becoming more common in our everyday life as our diets change and certain things become more moral to eat than others, for instance, as habits in breastfeeding mothers change. No. It's video games. Number 4, British rock star and all-around person people don't love, back in 2011, went ahead and blamed video games for riots.
We live in an age of violence, and I don't care what other people say. Brutal TV and brutal video...
I'm not going to keep doing that voice. Brutal TV and brutal video games are a reason for this pointless violence. The people are immune to violence, they're used to it, and if they get caught, they aren't punished right away. The prisons are already full, then build new ones. For one, this is silly. He doesn't even actually give any real correlation, just that supposedly people are used to violence. The implication being that people can't discern real violence from video game violence, and I'm gonna go ahead and say even if video games were genuinely photorealistic, if you can control it, there's just something different about it inherently. When you see somebody like punch somebody else in real life, there's a visceral reaction to it that you don't really get from a video game, at least on the same level. Certainly, yes, you can get a sensation of immersion, but there's an element of disbelief that I've always gotten whenever I see real-world violence happening that I just don't with video games, no matter how realistic they are. But no, we're just used to it. We can't think, I guess. Noel. And moving on to number 3, cops in Australia decided to blame driving games for bad drivers in Australia. Now, this was a while ago, but it just shows the lack of thought put into things. A police superintendent said this: video games can have a negative impact on young drivers because it increases their complacency and their indulgence in risk-taking behavior. In games, you race, you crash, and it is a matter of pressing the buttons and off you go again. In real life, it doesn't work that way. You can be killed. Duh. I'm sorry, but even kids know that. Do you know how many times you have to justify to kids why you put a seatbelt on them? They understand that you can get hurt in a car. Why? They've been told so many times to just shut up and stop moving and keep your darn seatbelt on. Sorry, but no. Kids know that there's a difference between driving a real car and a video game and it's obvious the literal second you step into a car. And we're talking about games from now. This news story happened in 2008, back when video games were even less like a real car. Sorry, but even the good steering wheel controllers are generally not the same thing as driving a car. You have to be sitting in an incredibly expensive mechanical simulator to actually feel something that resembles driving in a real car because it has hydraulics in it to simulate weight shift. Sorry, it's just not the same. I've played racing games my whole life. The first time I sat in a driver's seat in a real car, I was terrified. They do not move like you think they're going to move, and it scares the bejeebus out of you. At number 2, the New York Times reported that China's leader Xi Jinping noted that too many children in the country needed glasses. Now, this is a harmless statement. However, Chinese state media decided to back up a bunch of laws that were rolled out by saying the reason they needed glasses was not because they need to do better in distributing glasses or something like that, but because video games. Just the video games, they make your eyes bad. They flip the blurry switch from the off to the on position. It just turns all of the blurry on. I word it like that because it's dumb, and there's studies that literally say the opposite happens from video gameplay. Work out of the University of Rochester, for instance, says that playing action video games improves the visual ability crucial for tasks like reading and driving at night. Another study from McMaster University showed that video games helped patients who had developed cataracts develop better detail spotting abilities. Another study, published in National Neuroscience, is simply called Carrot Sticks or Joysticks. Video games improve vision. There's a number of other studies as well. The ones that I've cited are from different times through the last decade. It's an ongoing thing that they've found and is reproducible. So, no, Chinese government, not true. And coming in at number 1, a 9-year-old Florida boy was sentenced for bringing weapons to school, which apparently his dad thought was because he played Minecraft. This was also the narrative that the media went along with. You see, he brought a gun to school, and the dad said he was just acting up the game. They use hammers to dig and knives and guns to protect themselves from zombies, which, no, they don't. You have to mod guns in, and if you're playing on a console, you're definitely not modding guns in. Now, I'm not going to say that Minecraft is a totally non-violent game, but nope, not in this way. This game is literally taught in schools. It's used to encourage creativity, like first graders do Minecraft as part of school, all over the place. Just gonna say no, this is ridiculous, absolutely not. And it's so funny that the media was just like willing to take the father at his word. Clearly the father doesn't understand Minecraft, and they're just like, oh, so it's video games that are the problem? Yes. So yeah, while sometimes I understand why people are quick to jump to video games as a scapegoat for a large number of society's ills, the actual logic they use very rarely pans out. What do you think? Leave us a comment, let us know, and if you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time, right here on gameranx.